Hey everyone! A special shout out to all the recent graduates who, unable to land a job in their field, have joined the ranks of couriers, retail workers, and entry-level managers. Guys, I was just like you. No prospects, no self-respect after several failed interviews at big firms. But hey, bills don't pay themselves, so I took a job as a sales manager for water meters. My job was simple. I had to organize meetings with residents of apartment buildings and convince them to buy our world's best water meters. The reality of the job? Constant arguments with retirees, endless debates with clueless people, humiliation, stress. For someone as introverted as me, it was hell. But the worst experience, the one that still sends chills down my spine, is the story I'm about to tell you. It happened on a cold, gloomy October evening. I had just climbed to the 9th floor of a rundown apartment building on Norwegian Street. My routine was the same: knock on doors, invite residents to a meeting on the first floor, deal with people ignoring me through the peephole. Some agreed to come, others made excuses, and many just didn't answer. At some point, I reached apartment 57 on the 2nd or 3rd floor. I don't remember exactly, and knocked. From behind the old worn-out wooden door, I heard a voice. "Who are you?" I immediately went into my usual sales pitch, loud and confident, explaining that I was a representative of the best company in the universe, inviting them to a meeting. But the voice just repeated, "Who are you?" I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but something in the tone. It felt old, insane. I hesitated but introduced myself. Sergei Maximov, sales manager for Scam Tech. The same question came again, and again. After the 3rd time, I realized it was pointless. I turned to leave, but the voice from the apartment kept getting louder, more aggressive. As the noise echoed through the stairwell, I hurried downstairs. By the time I reached the 1st floor, a few elderly women had gathered. I greeted them, handed out my business cards, and began my pitch. Everything was going fine until the noise from apartment 57 reached us downstairs. A woman from the 4th floor came down and whispered to one of the elderly ladies, "Valentina Pavlovna, she's awake. You should go home." Without a word, the old ladies crammed into the elevator and disappeared. The woman turned to me. "You should leave too. No one's coming tonight. Just go." So much for my workday. Frustrated, I stepped outside into the cold evening air. The streetlights flickered on, illuminating the high-rise windows. As I walked away, I instinctively looked back at apartment 57. The lights were off, but as soon as my eyes met the window, the curtain moved. I had to keep working. At the next building, things went smoothly. More people showed up. I handed out more business cards, even got a few agreements. We held the meeting outside, which was much better than a stuffy apartment lobby. That's when I saw her. Under the glow of a street lamp stood a hunched old woman in a filthy green coat, draped over a tattered house dress that barely resembled clothing. Her head was wrapped in a frayed ushanka, and she wore wool socks, no shoes. "Here comes Scab," muttered one of the residents, pocketing my business card before briskly walking away. As the woman approached, more and more people disappeared into the building. Soon, only 2 men were left, both casually smoking on a bench. I was about to leave when the voice rang out again, sending a cold shiver down my spine. "Who are you?" One of the men chuckled under his breath at my half-rhymed reply. I didn't argue. I never liked fighting with the elderly, especially the deranged ones. The next day, I worked at a different building. I wanted to stay away from that place. Maybe it was irrational, but I didn't want to run into people who had seen me deal with that crazy old woman. Eventually, though, I had to finish my assigned route. There were still 3 more meetings left in that cursed building. As I passed the entrance, I noticed something by the door. A coffin lid leaning against the wall. Out of morbid curiosity, I glanced at the photo of the deceased. My stomach twisted into a knot. It was the younger guy from the bench. The same haircut, the same round nose. He had laughed at that old woman just 2 days ago. Now he was dead. I felt sick. I didn't want to knock on any more doors, didn't want to disturb anyone. But I had a job to do. I forced myself to continue. That night, exhausted, I microwaved my dinner and slumped in front of the TV. My mom came home soon after, but instead of walking in, she slammed the door behind her and pressed her eye to the peephole. "Mom?" What's wrong? Shh, she whispered, waving me off. She stood there for 15 minutes, just staring. Over dinner, she finally spoke. Some old woman had approached her at the tram stop. The hag grabbed her wrist in a death grip, muttering something under her breath. My mom tried to pull away, but the skeletal fingers wouldn't budge. The encounter lasted only seconds, but the old woman's raspy whispers terrified her. When my mom finally broke free and ran home, the crone followed. She made it into the apartment building, ringing every doorbell, and each time she rasped the same question, "Who are you?" She rang our door too, but we sat in silence, waiting for it to end. Our neighbor, Uncle Pasha, eventually had enough. He kicked the hag out of the building and called an ambulance. The paramedics took her away. That night at around 2 a.m., our doorbell rang again. A tear-streaked neighbor stood outside. "Uncle Pasha, he's not doing well. His head, the pressure. Can you help us get him downstairs?" He died in the hospital a few days later. A brain hemorrhage. The whole ordeal broke my mother. She aged overnight. Gray strands appeared in her hair. Her eyes lost their warmth. I asked her, "Mom, what did that old woman say to you?" At first, she muttered nonsense. Then her face twisted into something grotesque, her voice turning guttural. "I know who woke me up. Your little Sergei did. I had a son once too, but I ate him, but never buried his bones. And now, I'll eat yours too." As she spoke, her eyes burned with madness. She kept going, describing in eerie detail how human flesh should be prepared, mixing in pagan incantations. I begged her to stop, whispered at first, then louder. Then I screamed. She suddenly went silent, stared at me like I was a stranger. And then she asked in a voice I never wanted to hear again, "Who are you?"